welcome back to the channel for episode 2 of the rebuild of this 2017 Yamaha R1. Last episode we discussed a lot of the issues and damage that this bike had, and this episode we are going to start removing said damaged parts as well as parts that may not be damaged. But the goal of this episode is to really get the bike prepped to swap over the Ohlins forks and rear suspension that come on the R1M. So this episode we're gonna just start removing the wiring harness, a lot of the damaged plastics, well, I guess what's left of the damaged plastics, and everything else to kind of make way, the airbox, all that stuff. If it's damaged, it's being removed. So we're going to kick things off by removing the wiring harness, and we'll just go from there. So glad you guys made it back to check out this episode. I appreciate you for checking out the last episode, and I appreciate you guys for subscribing and just taking your time out to come watch these videos. So without further ado, let's start removing this harness. Alright guys, so I wanted you to take a look at this. This is what you call shoddy work. These wires are literally just spliced together. Looks like they may have had electric tape just holding them bundled together. But this is a really good way to end up in a regretful situation. These wires don't have any type of, protection on. They don't have wire loom. They don't have heat shrink tubing, not even silicone, super glue, nothing. Like, this is a really good way to start a fire. And if you recall the 2016 bike that I have, that's exactly what happened to this bike. And notice the area that caught on fire. Pretty much the same spot. So these wires, I'm pretty sure, are part of the aftermarket tail light assembly. But man, it's like some people don't realize when you're riding on these motorcycles, you're sitting on like 4 gallons of gasoline, which is extremely flammable. So if these wires were to start off a chain reaction, they're gonna basically travel all the way up that harness, right under that fuel tank where the injectors and everything run, and you're really gonna end up in a bad situation. But what's even worse is that someone took the time to spend all the money on this bike with the ECU flash, the tail tidy kit, just everything else that they put into this bike. But then you do stuff like this to the wiring to potentially damage that ECU flash that you got. And more Mafia flashes are not like, $200. So this just really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And if this is the type of electrical work that you're going to do on your bike, I would suggest you just pay somebody to do it properly. That's the end of my rant. Now back to the action. All right, y'all. So I removed the radiator, the oil cooler, as well as that radiator and oil cooler hoses off camera. But when it came to removing the headers, I had to break out the grinder with the cutoff wheel. And the reason why is as you look at these pancake headers, the way that they were, this particular one was blocking the last bolt that I needed to access to get these headers off the engine. So I had to use the cutoff wheel to kind of cut a notch into it. I grabbed the pry bar, bent it out of the way a little bit so I could gain access to that last bolt. And if it works, it works, So that's kind of what I had to do to get that thing off. It wasn't conventional, wasn't really easy, but if it works, it works. It's just crazy the amount of damage on these things, man. Now, after I removed the radiator and the headers and all that good stuff, I was able to get a better look at the engine to see if there was any damage, because this was the primary concern as far as damage goes from the impact, and I still really have not seen any visible damage done to the engine block. So far we're good. look at the rest of that damage after I pulled off the exhaust and the oil cooler and radiator and all that stuff. Looking at the engine, this is the damage that the oil filter took. I'm gonna assume that it did not cause too much damage because the oil filter, there wasn't really leaks coming from the oil filter, but it's hard to say now because when I pulled off some of these oil cooler hoses, you know, oil started leaking and some of it came from here as you see that drop. Plus this oil filter does have a slit in it. So I'm sure oil came out, leaked down at some point, but I don't see any oil that looks like it leaked from the oil filter. I mean the oil pan itself, which today I think I'm going to drop the oil pan just to make sure there's no more water damage. And after I do all of that, put everything back together, run some fresh oil through it, some, cheap oil just to, flush out anything else that shouldn't be in there before I try to start this engine and cause more damage than what's already here. Haven't found real major damage yet. And that's pretty much all the major components that need to be removed. So check the frame inside and out. There was no damage inside the frame. It's definitely no damage on the outside of the frame. I mean, if it's warped or something like that, I cannot see it with the naked eye. And I have not seen anything that's telling me that it is. So nothing. I mean, even the frame sliders are pretty straight. The one on the other side has a slight bend to it. So, yeah, I think today, or since I have to order that oil pan gasket, as well as these oil lines, well, cooler lines, I consider these to be major components. They may not be, but for me, they are. And I don't go cheap Chinese or aftermarket with stuff like that. I'd rather it come from genuine Yamaha parts. So have to order this line as well as these two lines. And that should be that as far as engine work goes. And in the meantime, while I'm waiting for that to come in, I can start swapping over these forks. The subframe, the swing arm is going to remain on this bike because honestly, I just like the black look of the engine casing as well as the swing arm. Probably have to do a little something to that. I may get carbon fiber covers at some point, but right now, not really a focal point since this is going to be a personal bike for however long I decide to keep it. I can take my time with doing some of that stuff. Yeah. So probably start swapping over the subframe. As I say, cleaning out this crap because this valve was open. This one was closed. This one was in the process of opening, but it's pretty closed. And this one was closed. So yeah, this one, and you see a lot of that little crust that's in there. But this one was really the only one that was open. So as I said, the water just basically, it was allowed to come in, fill up these throttle body because the airbox was broken. And from there, it just seeped down inside, found a gap to leak out of. In the process of leaking out of those gaps, decided to go either in the oil pan through that route, or it came out here through the exhaust. So this is the reason why the oil pan is coming down, because you don't want an oil pan that's full of stuff like that. Plus, the oil pan was still wet. As a matter of fact, when I took this cooler hose off, it's actually the most southern oil line that I found. Oil came out. Like, not milkshake, not water, oil. So either it came from the oil filter, which is this port right here, or there was just still oil in there somewhere, but I'm going to assume that it came from the oil filter, which means that the water had not circulated through the engine. And it basically just, as I suspected, just leaked down to the oil pan. And since water is so thin, that's actually a good thing, because what it means is there should not be, traces of oil throughout the engine. All of it just basically leaked down and settled at the bottom of the engine, which is basically the bottom of the oil pan. So far been pretty blessed with this one. Pretty blessed. Alright, so since I was going to replace these spark plugs anyways, and the airbox was damaged and I had to remove the throttle body because, ironically, it was also damaged. So here's what these spark plugs look like. I replaced these spark plugs with NGK Iridium spark plugs. If you haven't heard about those, do a little research on them. They come in pretty clutch. But spark plugs weren't too bad, but since the bike had been sitting up and I already had water inside the engine, I mean, why not? I just removed the drain plug again for the second time since I've had this bike. Gave it time to let that extra oil and water and whatnot that was in it to, run down a little bit more and settle at the bottom. So right now what I'm going to do is just take some extra oil that I had laying around for my last build. Pretty much every bike that I work on, especially if I sell it, I'll go ahead and do a service to it, flush the coolant, flush the oil, the brakes, do all of that stuff. So I usually end up with extra oil left over. So we'll go ahead and use this to flush this out. Alright guys, I think we're gonna call it quits right here. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, share, even comment. So on the next video, we're gonna start breaking down this beautiful R1M and start to swap over the Ohlins suspension package. So until the next time, you guys stay safe, stay blessed, holla at your boy. Peace.